Okay, good morning, everybody. Are you ready? Ready? Okay, I hereby call this meeting of the Board of Adjustment to order. My name is Crystal Halverson, and I serve as the chair of the board. I live in Elk Mound Township. I'll have the other members introduce themselves and what township they're from, and that will serve as our roll call.
Jerry Porter, Tanner Township.
David Bartlett, Sheridan Township.
Jill Noreen, Menominee Township.
Mark Deach, Grant Township.
Thank you. So before we begin, I'd like to confirm that proper notice has been given both for this meeting and for the two hearings. Anne, is that good?
Yep, notice was published in the Colfax Messenger, and I can't remember the other one through them. The Tribune Press Reporter, the 2 Wednesdays subsequent or previous to today.
Thank you, Anne. And then just for members of our audience, the Zoning Board of Adjustment functions like a court and must follow state laws and local zoning ordinances. The zoning board cannot change or ignore any part of the ordinance or state laws, but must apply the laws as written. The zoning board may only grant a variance, a special exception, or an administrative appeal if the applicant provides evidence showing that they meet all of the legal standards for that decision. The legal standards of the zoning board will be used to decide on each application, and they've been provided to the applicant and will be described at this meeting by the zoning board or staff. In each hearing, we'll begin by going over what has been submitted, whether it's an application or an appeal. Then we'll review any relevant reports, such as site inspection findings. The applicant will get a chance to explain their side, and we'll also consider input from the county planning staff if they have any insights. Following that, we'll have a question and answer session. We'll ask questions to the applicant, staff, and anybody else involved. We'll make sure to listen to various perspectives, including those in favor, those opposed, and those who are just here to provide information. Once we have all the facts, we'll conclude the hearings and then deliberate in open session and make a decision. Our decisions, based on the discussions and the evidence presented, will be documented and sent out to the applicants involved in a timely manner. If you're ever not satisfied with our decisions today, you have the option to challenge it. There's a 30-day window from the time we finalize our decision to take the matter to a higher court. So thank you for joining us, and let's get started. We'll start with an approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes that Anne presented to us?
I approve the minutes of the meeting from last month, January.
Thank you, Jill. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Same side. Opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. And then I'm going to open up the first hearing for special exception 24-001. Anne, would you like to start with the staff report?
Yep, I'm just navigating to the packet here. So the first application we're looking at, so both applications are from the same group, Richard and Jacqueline Casper Revocable Trust, and their agent is Ron Jasperson. They're both for non-farm residential parcels in the primary agriculture district. And the first one that we're going to be looking at today is a 2.7969 acre parcel. The base farm tract is 416 acres. As you can see on the screen here, this is the proposed lot for 2.7969 acres. And there's a shed and some other outbuildings there. All right, so the request is to create the 2.77 acre lot to use it as a non-farm residence within the primary agricultural zoning district. And I believe this is in the town of Lucas. It is in the town of Lucas. So there are standards for creating a non-farm residence. Dunn County zoning ordinance requires 1 acre minimum for non-farm, single-family, two-family residences in IA and PA zoning districts. The standards in section 13.4.0.04F are also in accordance with Wisconsin statutes 91.46. So the three criteria that apply are the ratio of non-farm to farm acreage, the ratio of non-farm residential acreage on the base farm tract on which the residence is or will be located cannot be greater than 1 to 20. There cannot be more than 4 dwelling units used as non-farm residence, nor for a new farm residence more than 5 dwellings of any residences of any kind within the base farm tract. Also, the location and size of the proposed non-farm residential parcel. We have to look at whether it converts prime farmland, agricultural use, or convert land used or as cropland other than a woodlot. We also need to see if it significantly impairs or limits the current or future agricultural use of other protected farmland. So staff analyzed the requests, and I can go through that right now. So the base farm tract is 416 acres. When calculated, they're allowed up to 20.8 acres of non-farm residential use in the BFT, base farm tract. For this request, they're requesting 2.7 acres for a lot. And then they have an additional one that we'll be hearing next for 2.95 acres. If this is approved, this will leave 18.03 acres. And if both are approved, there'll be 15.08 acres remaining for non-farm residential use. So based on this analysis, the proposed non-farm residence meets standard number 1 because the ratio of non-farm residential acreage to farm acreage will not exceed 1 to 20. So at the moment, the base farm tract has 2 non-farm residences. Upon approval of the request to establish a non-farm residential lot, provided the proposed home obtains all permits and construction is finalized, the count of non-residences or non-farm residences will increase to 3. Approval of this application will leave room for potential creation of 1 additional non-farm residence in the future. However, if both of the applications are approved, no future non-farm residences can be approved within this base farm tract. So the conclusion here, the proposed non-farm residence meets standard number 2. The location and size, the proposed 2.77 acre non-farm parcel will include a home, driveway, septic system, and existing outbuildings. Information provided by the web soil survey and our Surgo soil maps, which were included in the packet, show the area of the lot to be entirely prime farmland. A minor portion of the lot is also used as cropland. However, most of it has just been used for residential use in the past, mostly grass, woodland, and non-farmland. The Land and Water Conservation Division confirmed that the trust is not a participant in the Farmland Preservation Program. The creation of the proposed non-farm residential parcel would be unlikely to impair the current or future use of other protected farmland. So we can't really conclude that this one meets standard number 3 because the acreage contains prime farmland and existing farmland, even though it is a minor amount. The town of Lucas discussed it and recommended approval of the request at their meeting on January 9th. So the request satisfies 2 of the 3 criteria for establishing a non-farm residence in the primary agriculture zoning district. Provided the applicant or their agent can kind of confirm that the existing cropland will remain dedicated to either agricultural or open space use and not converted for residential purposes, we can recommend approval as staff. I've attached some conditions in the hearing packet that we can add that will just go further to ensure that while this is including some agricultural primary farmland, it's not necessarily converting it. And full disclosure too, I believe the size of this lot is based on the town of Lucas's minimum lot size requirements. And we can, I just have the notice here just to prove that that's on there. All right, and I can answer any questions or I will be here.
I have one for you, Ann. So is the existing cropland the small strip to the north and to the west of the existing pole shed or building there?
Yeah, so you can see it. I'm bringing up the photo here just
Yeah,
for
I'm looking
better.
at a map.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's this kind of, just this edge around the buildings there. It's a pretty small amount.
Yes.
Which again, it's up to the board whether just to approve it as it is or to add those conditions if they feel they're necessary.
Thank you.
Hi, I have a question about, one of your conditions states about keeping it into farmland or open area. And then I was thinking about the woodlot being one of the, it seems like sort of an exception. And I'm just wondering about the difference between open area and woodlot.
So it'd be the same thing
Yeah.
essentially. I mean, I don't think this is too much of I wouldn't say it's like an intended woodlot for like harvesting
Right.
or anything like that. The language is essentially just intended to maintain the non-residential use of the property that exists as it is now.
Right.
I can show those conditions on the screen if you'd like there too.
That the amount or the distance from the building on the map to the lot line that's proposed is there because of a required setback?
I would maybe have their agent answer that. He would probably know offhand what the measurement is.
I'm just saying it looks like, otherwise that building is pretty close to the field line.
Does anybody have any more questions for staff before we bring up the applicant or their agent? Would somebody from the applicant side like to approach? Hi. Could you start out by giving us your name and your address,
Sure.
please?
My name is Ron Jasperson. My work address at Auth Consulting is 406 Technology Drive East in Menominee.
Thank you. And do you agree to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but here today?
I do.
Thank you. Do you want to give us some starting off?
Yep, I'll give you a little scenario. So this parcel, I always refer to as the shed parcel, because since we had two parcels we're working with. I know when I was working with Richard, he wanted to carve off a buildable spot on this area because there is an existing well on this site. It's kind of more on the south end of the property. And again, you had the question about the setbacks from the building, and we kept everything about 30 feet away from the existing building. So if there was a 25-foot setback, we're way beyond that. So, so the setback issue is not really a problem. And again, the reason of the lot size, we kept it at 2.5 acres, excluding right-of-way, per the town of Lucas's requirements. And adding the right-of-way gives us that 2.77 acres. Yeah, the really only tillable area that is included, that's currently being tilled, is that north strip and west strip. Everything to the south, it starts to go up a steep hillside, and it's kind of a grassy CRP hillside. So it's not really tillable at this time. And those trees are really nothing. No, they're not prime oak or prime elm. It's just more of some cottonwoods and popple trees. So, I guess I'm open up to any questions.
Name, I'm sorry.
Ron Jasperson.
Thank you. Does anybody on the board have any questions for Mr. Jasperson?
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead. Thank you.
Motion,
One second. So I just want to start by making sure that there isn't anybody else in the audience that wants to approach the podium and give testimony. It's okay if you don't, just making sure there isn't anybody who wants to speak in the affirmative or in the negative to this application. Okay, if that's the case, I'm going to close this hearing. And then, Ann, do you recommend that we move on to the second hearing and then deliberate together? That's how the agenda is set up, so we should proceed that way.
If you're okay with
Yeah.
it, otherwise you can choose to move that up.
That's
The-
okay by me. Is it okay by you guys? To do it the way it's agended? Okay. So now we're going to open up another hearing for special exception 24-002. And Anne, we recognize that everybody has been at the prior hearing that just concluded, so you can summarize in the way you feel is best for us. Thank you.
Thank you. So this one is very similar, like Ron said. The one that we just went over, he's referring to as like the shed parcel. So I'm just scrolling down here to get the photo up. So this one has an existing house on it already. You can see that here, and then you have just kind of a small area for a yard, and then the rest looks like it's cropland. And this is an aerial photo from, I believe, 2023. Oh. 250th. All right, so this one's a little bit bigger. It's a 2.95 acre lot. Again, it meets the ratios of non-farm to farm acreage. It doesn't exceed the dwelling cap. Again, the location and size, we have kind of a similar situation in that the cropland is on prime areas of prime farmland. For that reason, we can't totally conclude that this would meet number 3, but we do know that it's not within the farmland preservation program, or at least the property owners are not within that plan. And then it doesn't look like it would hinder or, be a restriction for present or future use of other protected farmland. So again, we have really just similar language suggesting a deed restriction that outlines this to any future current property owners, just that they're being approved for the non-farm use, but just hoping that we can kind of keep some of that agricultural or open space use open. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Anne. I'm assuming that, like the other one, this meets the minimum. It's basically like the minimum size lot that they would be able to. They have no choice but to encroach into some crop land in order to create a parcel.
Yeah, it's the town of Lucas's minimum lot size that they're trying to meet here.
And Lucas also approved, or was fine with this as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
And just to kind of add to both of them, this is really close to like what the minimum, they really couldn't do anything differently here that would get this out of prime farmland or out of cropland. I mean, as you can see, this is a really small existing lot already. In order to meet that threshold for the minimum acreage for the town of Lucas, they couldn't reconfigure this in any way that would prevent it from using prime farmland or cropland.
Does anyone on the board have additional questions for staff at this time?
Since there's, I just don't understand the process that there's a house there already.
Right. So if there's a house there already, this was part of that base farm tract. So we don't really go back in time and require permits for something that existed prior.
When it was made.
So essentially they're coming to us now saying, hey, we're thinking about selling this, or someone else is going to live here that's not part of the farm family. And that they most likely, whoever's living there won't be farming actively, so they won't meet those statutory requirements for a farm parcel. So then they have to go through this process.
Thank you.
And then Anne, can you tell me if the deed restriction is onerous or expensive?
I believe it's $30.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody on the board have any questions for the applicant's person, Mr. Jasperson?
Does the applicant have any discussion concerning the prime farmland restriction on the conditions?
And what would be the conditions?
Ann, do you want to answer that?
I can. So one of the things that we have in here as possible conditions, the board does not have to approve these. Essentially, they're in there so that any future landowner knows what's to be expected in this approval. Essentially, right now, as it's written, which could be changed, we're saying that we want that open space and cropland area to remain as either open space or cropland, not to be converted to more residential use.
Correct. Okay. Yeah, I think that would be acceptable. Yes.
Something like that.
So you're saying there'd be no, they could not build an accessory building within that lot?
On that prime farmland, from what I understand, is that right?
So if it were to be just for residential storage and not for any other like open space use storage, like, or farm related, they'd have a difficult time putting it in that cropland area.
Yeah. But-
Essentially, these are designed so that we're not taking up prime farmland.
Yeah.
The board can choose whether they keep those on there or not, or if they make it smaller.
I know with the discussions with Richard, the individual that's going to be, this property is going to be conveyed to, did talk about putting a shed on there for storage, for his own personal residential storage.
Sir, are you aware of whether or not that would be in the area on the picture that we
Oh,
see,
definitely.
like
Yes,
in
they'd be within
green?
the, yes, would be within the proposed lot. Yes.
No, I understand it's within the proposed lot, but what we're asking is, would it reduce the amount of current cropland, or would it be in the top part of that property where the grass
It
currently
would
is?
be in the tillable area, so it would reduce some of the tillable area.
Okay,
Just to let you know, also, there is an existing septic system on the north that was failing. And at the time when we did the survey, they were putting in a new septic system on the south in the tillable area. So, so some of that tillable area is being used up for a new septic system. And just south of that is where I understand the individual wants to put the shed, so.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to clarify, just so that everybody understood what
Correct.
we were looking at.
Yeah, it was kind of a pickle. I mean, he's got to abide by the 2.5 acres. And there was really no, we configured it best we could with, with Richard's assistance to configure this lot.
What happened here is that he probably bought this land or this farm, and it had an existing farmstead on it, and he just kept it as it was.
Yes, this farm's been in the family for generations. The original farmstead is to the west, where the main buildings are at, and I don't know the history of this house, but it is part of the original farm tract.
Yeah.
we'll have some time to deliberate our motions and keep talking, but at this time, does the board have any additional questions for the applicant or for staff? In that case, I'll close the current public hearing and we'll move into our business items portion of the agenda. And so we will take these one at a time. First, I would like to entertain a motion to approve the application for a non-farm residence within of the 2.77 acre property. And this our motion maker can choose whether or not to start off with all of the conditions that Ann or that staff has suggested or not.
I would make a motion that we approve the 2.77 without any condition on it as presented.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, so now we have discussion.
So the motion didn't add any of these 1 through 7? Is that,
No, not on the 2.77.
which is 001?
Yep.
Thank you.
So most of these conditions collectively discuss the deed restriction. This particular property has a tiny amount of land that is in cropland. And I wonder if the gentleman would entertain a friendly amendment to include, condition number 1, which is just our boilerplate language. The owners of the property to which this special exception is issued will abide by all representations and commitments made in their application, as well as before the Board of Adjustment, and in accordance with all conditions to the special exception permits, taken as a whole, as approved by the Board of Adjustment.
I can include that in my motion.
Thank you. And Jerry, did you second?
I would
Or-
include that in my second.
Thank you. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, that motion carries. We'll move on to the second business item, looking at special exception 24-002. Looking for a motion here.
This one's a little bit more tricky, I think, than the first one. I do think that given the town minimum lot size required and the possible use that a non-farm owner would use this property for, I lean toward just perhaps waiving the requirement or the can't think of what they're called now. I just made a motion on it, but
Standard 3 about the acreage.
yeah, well, the acreage is fine because the only reason this one's bigger is because it's got more road on it. You know, I don't know that we should. I'm kind of conflicted here because the prime farmland and the farmland preservation is important. However, this farm is not using or taking any credit for the farmland preservation program. And so the request, he has to meet the minimum lot size of the town. And it's impossible to do that without taking in this lot amount. And so I'll just make a motion and see if it passes, it passes. If it doesn't, we'll do it again. I'll make a motion similar to the first motion that we approve this without condition, except for the first condition. And that's the motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have made a motion and we have also concluded that the third requirement does require that no cropland or farmland be converted and used for residential use. We've also heard testimony that a little bit of that has already been done in the digging of a septic and that there is a plan to put a shed that might encroach on some of that cropland. So I think our, this board needs to be comfortable that we are abiding by the law. And we could entertain a deed for some part of the property. Or we can go with the motion on the table.
If we look at the findings and conditions number 4, that has to do with language stipulating that any future transfer of the property shall be subject to this condition, and the new property owner shall be bound by the terms. Is that something that we want to consider or not? Or is that future?
I feel if we don't have a deed restriction like the motion states, that we don't need the rest of them,
Okay.
you know that. And I guess I'd like to voice my opinion that I think we should do it as the motion states, because when you move out into the country, you know, one of the reasons you do that is so that you have the space to put up a shed. Maybe you want a workshop, maybe you're into woodworking or metalworking. Thinking of myself, I have a shop that I like to go down and work with metal. I've built lots of trailers and all sorts of other things for people. And I mean, that's why you move out in the country. And if we put the restriction on the cropland and they wouldn't have the ability to build a shed, as far as I'm concerned, 100% of the people wouldn't want to live there. You might as well live in town. So I guess I feel strongly we should do what the motion states.
I would just add,
Okay.
add that the reason I made the motion as I did is primarily because of the lot requirement by the town.
Yeah.
If the lot requirement wasn't that large, it wasn't 2.5, this lot would be smaller. And so I don't think there's an intent here to use prime farmland, if you want to say in a bad way, or in a, that, you know what I mean?
No, and they could keep it, you know, a little bit smaller if they would have made it more square, with less road frontage. But it's easier to farm a narrow piece along the road than it would be to have something sticking way out into the field.
Yeah.
So you'd have less road. I mean, it makes sense the way it is.
I think the hearing has been closed, right? Yeah, I think we're okay, though. Is there any further discussion? So Mark's motion and second on the table is the exact same language as the first motion that we made, with just condition number 1 that basically states the applicant will follow the rules. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
For both of them?
Mm-hmm.
This is second, 002.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that motion passes. Thank you. And do we have any announcements or correspondence?
We don't, other than we will have a hearing next month at the regular scheduled date and time.
Which holiday is that?
Okay, so the date of our next meeting is Monday, March 18th, not a federal holiday. At this time, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you all.